Hey, so I want to talk about the jackhammer, right? Recently, Vivyan made this video about the jackhammer problem, where they say that they believe that the jackhammer is quite overpowered and should be nerfed in the context of speedrunning. And I want to go into this a little bit because I was mentioned at the end of this video. They showed a comment of mine providing a sort of idea for a solution to this jackhammer issue, right? The core of the jackhammer issue that Vivyan presented in their video is that the jackhammer gives you insane speed for no cost whatsoever. This is a diagram that they showed in the video. You should watch the video. It's really well made, and I'm also not going to explain every mechanic of the jackhammer that they showed here because I just want to go into the detail of the idea that I have and the problem that I see with the jackhammer. So the problem that they present, right, this diagram, on the left are things that are easy to pull off, on the right things are hard to pull off. Then the bars show the speed that you gain from the tech that is associated with the bar, and so we get this diagram, right? The blue ones are tech associated with the jackhammer, the green ones are everything else. There are two sort of spikes that the jackhammer gives us in our velocities in this sort of speed economy that Vivyan presents, right? We have this spike in the middle and then the spike at the end. The spike at the end comes from when you do jackhammer boosts from an ultra boost or from other jackhammer boosts, right? Doing the consecutive jackhammer hits or jackhammer hits after an ultra boost are insane. They give you insane amounts of speed, but they are also insanely hard to pull off. Now here in the middle, this is where I personally see the problem with the jackhammer. I said this in another Discord message that wasn't shown here in the video by Vivyan. My idea for the jackhammer, my basic principle that I think can also be seen in this diagram pretty clearly, in my opinion, is that the top speeds of the jackhammer that come from ultra boosts, that come from consecutive jackhammer hits, are valid and cool strategies. This end of the spectrum is cool. This in the middle is not so much. Every single movement tech here in the middle that is similarly hard to perform or takes similar costs is completely outclassed by the jackhammer. It gives you more speed for the same or less cost. It is quite powerful. These two pieces of tech that are put in the middle of this graph aren't even the only ones that you can do out of a jackhammer. These are just the most powerful ones. And even the ones that are less powerful than this are still problematic, as they are incredibly powerful. And so, right, what am I talking about, right? Any tech that gives you red gauge and a slam, right? That combo is crazy powerful. If you do a slam before or during the hit stop, you get insane speed. This is insanely powerful, insanely easy to pull off, and it's crazy, right? This heals you, it allows you to do it omnidirectionally from any enemy. This is crazy. This is used in some P% routes, inbounds, it has the potential to use it. It does need enemies, which is a restraint that makes it not too overpowered, and if there were more enemies that allowed you to do these jackhammer boosts, it would be absolutely busted. So it's good that we don't have enough enemies to do this jackhammer boost on, right? Because otherwise we would be living in jackhammer hell. Every boost would be jackhammer. But yeah, this is kind of a little bit of a nerf, right? Not every route can employ a jackhammer boost out of a slam as a sort of this is a sort of speed building technique, right? If there were more enemies around, we would see it a lot more. Which is why I believe that this is a little bit too powerful, and that this specific interaction of slamming in the hit stop or before the hit stop should be slightly altered and nerfed and possibly removed. I believe that removing it wouldn't do much harm to the speedrunning of this game. If this was removed, I would see another problem with the jackhammer. If this was removed, this spike in the middle of the pack would not be gone. It would just be a little bit lower. You would still have a jackhammer that gives you 100 units of speed very consistently every time, or possibly 120, 130, stuff like that, right? Because you can do a jackhammer boost out of a dash jump without the slam, you still get 100 units of speed. That is crazy. If you do it out of a whiplash cancel, you get over 110 units of speed. Or a slam storage, you get 120 units of speed, right? These things are insanely powerful, even without doing it from a slam. And so I believe that the jackhammer needs a nerf that doesn't just target the slam interaction, but targets the low speed jackhammer interactions. Okay, so let's look at this. We have green gauge, yellow gauge, and red gauge. Green gauge gives you about 6 units per second of speed from a jackhammer boost. A yellow gauge boost gives you about 24 units of speed, right? Now, the red gauge gives you not just the speed of the yellow gauge plus a little bit, it gives you 56 units. So this is kind of an exponential curve And I believe that this is too powerful. Given that 90% of speedrunning happens at red gauge speeds, right? We always do dash jumps, slide jumps, SSJs. All this tech is faster than red gauge. Red gauge starts at 50 units per second. Again, a plain dash jump. That is 2 inputs to get a red gauge. So I believe that there's a couple of things that could be done here. First of all, the bar for red gauge could be moved a little bit. This would impact casual gameplay a lot and would probably make hitting red gauge really hard for low skill players. But still, this could be an option. What I propose is that this exponential function is changed a little bit. I believe that green gauge should probably stay the same. You barely gain any speed, you barely had any speed before it, that's fine. Yellow gauge doesn't necessarily need a change, but I believe that it should be lowered at least a little bit to accommodate the change that the red gauge is going to get. Because the red gauge, in my opinion, should be reworked. Instead of just having one velocity and when you reach red gauge, I believe that it should be multiple velocities that you get at different stages, right? Dash jump should probably give you what currently the yellow gauge gives you, or a little bit lower. Instead of 24 units, which I believe is what it is supposed to be, it should be probably 22 units, because then a dash jump into a jackhammer hit would give you 72 units. It would be in line with all the other options that are in the middle of the pack in this graph, right? We have floor fobs, CE boosts, oil boosts, right? Slide cap. All of these things are in the middle of the pack. They're easy to pull off, but they all cap you at 72 units per second. 72 units per second is the soft cap for a lot of tech, which makes it interesting to route because there's different tech filling different roles. And I believe that the jackhammer from a dash jump give you 72 units per second. It would be a whole lot more balanced than it was before. But instead of just being a flat nerf, which removes this really cool peak here on the side with really cool routes, really interesting stuff, where 24 units might just not be enough to make it actually have time save, I believe that the top speed of the jackhammer should still be possible. Basically, these 56 units of speed should still be reachable, but only when you reach really high velocities above 100 units per second. In the Discord message that Vivyan showed in their video, I said that you should start getting this boost at 100 units per second, which would make the whole slamming thing still work the same as before. And I think the slamming thing should be nerfed regardless. But for now, let's talk about the gauge still. Red gauge, the top speed of the red gauge should remain as it is, but the barrier to reach this should be somewhere around the 100 mark. I believe that it should be above the 100 units per second mark. If you can reach faster than 100 units per second, you're doing some insane stuff, right? You're most likely doing an ultra boost, maybe a hyper dive, maybe an SSJ into a jackhammer boost. There's a bunch of really complex stuff that could give you the over 100 units per second that I believe should be the minimum to get this amount of speed. All this super difficult stuff should give you a super big reward, because then you would have the problem. You just do a straight line to your target, or do you maybe do a beeline to somewhere else, to do a hyper dive, to do a SSJ, to get this insane speed boost at the cost of whatever tech you're doing. I believe that this could be really cool, really interesting to route, really fun. And then somewhere in the middle there should be just something to fill this gap, something probably not nearly as powerful. Maybe this should still be like a somewhat exponential curve, but something in the middle should also be there. I believe that this increase should not be like a completely linear thing. It should be like a steps, a little bit like a red gauge with like having its own gauges. The jackhammers should give you the same speed if you go from 50 units per second to 70 or something, and then from 70 to 110 it should give you the same amount of speed as well. Then from 110 to infinity it should give you the maximum. I believe that should be kind of the how the red gauge works. This is kind of my idea, right? We nerf a little bit the yellow gauge to make this whole thing possible, put the start of red gauge down to where yellow gauge is currently, and then have an increase in steps from 50 units per second to infinity, to where you're only awarded the red gauge maximum speed when you're already going insane speeds, to make fast tech more rewarding, to make slow tech not as powerful with the jackhammer, and to make the jackhammer more balanced in general. This would have to go hand in hand with a nerf to the slam interaction. Even if we nerf red gauge, or if we make slamming give you yellow gauge or something, you would still get over 100 units of speed for basically no cost, right? Slamming can be done so quickly, and this isn't nerfed, and you just get the 100 speed on top of any Jackhammer boost. Even a green gauge would be insanely powerful with a slam, right? 106 units is still crazy. And so I believe that the slam interaction has to be nerfed. This is just kind of crazy, busted, right? This is stupid. It does run the risk of infiltrating every route there is, right? Every P% route can use a Jackhammer boost somewhere. Most routes can use a Jackhammer boost somewhere, even if it's situational now. That isn't a guarantee for the future. Maybe the Jackhammer just dominates in the future as people make up more and more routes to make use of this insane speed, right? This has so much untapped potential in a lot of categories, right? In a lot of levels, this is going to be insane if people implement it, right? Already, it's saving a little bit of time in 2-2, 1-1, and such. This is already doing stuff that is insane that other tech just cannot compete with. And so I believe that this nerf would tackle this problem very well if the slam attraction is nerfed, right? This whole thing doesn't really matter if you could just slam to still get a yellow gauge, or still get what is the yellow gauge now. That's 124 units. I don't care if I don't get ultra boost speeds out of this interaction. It's still insanely fast. If this boost exists, it doesn't matter what gauge you get, how fast the gauges are, you're still getting 130 units. So I believe that this should definitely be nerfed. This should definitely be, there should be some clause where if you slam, it takes some amount of time before the slam velocity applies to your Jackhammer velocity, or something along those lines, because this is just crazy, and this would make any other balancing attempt of the Jackhammer impossible. If this is implemented, I believe that this solution of a tiered red gauge would make for an incredibly balanced weapon with a lot of interaction. To go into more of the specifics, I'm still just throwing out numbers, but after thinking about it a little bit more, I think these numbers make a little bit more sense, right? Green and yellow gauge stay the same. Then after 50 units of speed, we get the 24 unit speed boost. Then I believe 70 units is a great cutoff point to give us the second level of speed. As we can see in the diagram, slide cap is something we reach a lot, right? That's how most speedruns work. You reach a lot of slide cap, and this would be really fun to pull off after hitting an SSJ, after doing a CE boost. Doing this could be really fun and interesting. Getting this decent speed boost would be fun and interesting. And then for the most extravagant of routes where it just perfectly lines up with the enemies, where you just perfectly bonk your head like on 4-1, we would have this ultimate speed boost where you just get an insane speed boost for using an insane tech, right? This whole discussion came to be, right, because the developers came into the speedrunners to ask for feedbacks that's speedrunning specific, and some of that feedback turned into new tech that is going to come to the game, which would make this speed boost a little bit easier to get, because you could use UB speed into an enemy more easily, and then would cost another cooldown on top of the ultra boost to get this boost out of an enemy. So I believe that would still kind of be balanced, right? Just like thinking about the future that some speedrunners already know, I believe that this is would still be kind of balanced.